Hey there, A's Day fans. Welcome to our Saturday edition of our show. I'm your host, Joe Grado. I want to thank each and every one of you for continuing to tune in with us here at A's Day. Today is Saturday, October 25th, and we are rolling along with the A's off season. While MLB is coming to a wrap with the World Series that started last night with the Toronto Blue Jays winning 11-4, we're keeping the ball rolling here with the A's as they have already begun their off-season preparations for the 2026 season. We are going to put a bow on the 2025 season in this episode, where we are going to do our final season in review segment, where we're doing the overall team edition. We're going to grade out based on how they did as a collective from the pitching side of things, hitting and defense. We'll put it all together. We'll let you know what grade we came up with. And then we are going to continue on with our next This Player in A's History. Last episode, we selected a decade of A's player that we were going to be speaking about, and we selected randomly the 1920s. So, without further ado, we are going to be talking about a legend of the game, former Philadelphia Athletic Jimmie Foxx. That'll be a very exciting segment to get into. And then also, we do have some awards. We'll actually kick off the show after the opening music to mention from the current A's team, as Nick Kurtz was named the Sporting News Rookie of the Year, and then 3 A's were nominated for Silver Sluggers. We'll get all into that and a little bit more after we kick it off with our opening tunes. We're very excited to be back behind the mic, continue on with the off season, and can't wait to see the green and gold back in action. Holy Toledo, let's go A's. All right there, A's Day fans. Thank you again for tuning in on the Saturday edition of our show. We appreciate each and every one of you for continuing to tune in with us and hearing our thoughts on everything going on with the athletics organization. Before we jump into today's show, just want to give everyone a reminder of where you can find us on outside of these audio podcast episodes. Continue to listen, download, like us wherever you can, share with your friends. We appreciate it. We're appearing on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Podbean, iHeartRadio, so many more. Wherever you can find your favorite podcast, you can find A's Day most likely to as well. It's always exciting to stumble upon it on each media platform. But we also do post content on our social media platforms, our social media channels, on Instagram at A's Day Baseball, podcast on X, formerly known as Twitter, at A's Day Baseball. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel, where we have video editions of episodes just like this, as well as other video content like interviews with players, our travel destination, travel guides for you to get an opportunity to take a peek before choosing your next baseball destination city. We have created content at local hotspots in cities like Mesa and Sacramento, and looking to do so much more in 2026. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel for all of those kind of things. And to become an official subscriber of A's Day, be sure to check us out on our Patreon site, patreon.com/A's Day. For just $2 a month, you'll be entered to win A's Day, a monthly A's Day monthly t-shirt giveaways, A's autographed memorabilia, future A's game tickets, and so much more, as we are able to grow this platform collaboratively. All right. Without further ado, let's get to the first topic. We're just going to mention it briefly. This was a long time coming, and this isn't, I don't think, the official MLB Rookie of the Year award, but one media outlet, Sporting News, they gave out their awards for the 2025 season, and they named first baseman Nick Kurtz their Rookie of the Year. So congrats to him. Just wanted to mention that. Plenty more hardware, I think, to come for Kurtz by season's end from all these different outlets, but very cool for Kurtz, and I do think that's a precursor to what's to come. Once he receives the official MLB award, I believe he will be named this year's Rookie of the Year. And then in terms of Silver Sluggers, Nick Kurtz was also nominated for that, but he was joined by two A's teammates as well. Shea Langoliers was nominated for Silver Slugger from the catching position, and then Brent Rooker was the third A, and he got nominated for the designated hitter position. So good luck to those three. Hopefully they can bring home some hardware. Nick Kurtz, I think, is well on his way to getting the overall Rookie of the Year for sure in the American League. And then in terms of Silver Slugger, I think Kurtz has a great shot to get that one too as well. I think Langoliers, I think, being up against Cal Raleigh, that will be quite difficult. We'll see how it all shakes out. And then Brent Rooker, kind of in a similar situation. I do think there's some good competition at the designated hitter position. But he had a fine season, had his third straight 30 home run season. So best of luck to those three. Hopefully they all bring it home. We will talk about it once those awards are officially given out later in November. All right, just wanted to touch upon that. Now let's get to our first full segment, which we are going to conclude the season in review segments, where we, on the last few episodes, we've been breaking it down by position groups. So we did outfielders, catchers, infielders, starting pitching, and the bullpen. Now we're going to review this team as a whole and give them a grade based on their 2025 performance. And with this puts a bow on the 2025 season. There were some highs, there were some lows, and everything in between. But at the end of the day, you could say that this team is moving in the right direction. They won 7 more games this year than they did in 2024. So continue on that positive trajectory is going to move them closer and closer to being a team with postseason aspirations. So with that, we're going to jump right into our review. So on the season, they finished 76-86. Which was 4th in the American League West. They finished above the Angels in the division standings. Like I mentioned, they won 7 more games than they did the year before, so that's always a positive outcome. Just take a look inside the stats. They were ranked by, according to Fangraphs, I believe the 5th overall offense in all of baseball. So that's definitely something that jumps off the page here. But you can see definitely that they were a team that, while they did have some good offensive output, they showed their youth in other areas. We'll get into that a little bit. They hit .253 as a team for a team batting average that was 5th in all baseball and 3rd in the American League behind Toronto and Boston. Not a bad list and group to be a part of. They slugged 219 home runs, which was 7th in baseball and 4th in the American League. They scored 733 runs, which was 12th in baseball and 6th in the American League. They slugged 296 doubles, which was 2nd in MLB and the American League as well. And then also, let's see here. They also struck out 1,406 times, which was the 10th most in baseball, 7th in the American League. They drew 502 walks, which was the 13th least in baseball and the 6th in the American League. They had an OPS of 749, which was 8th in baseball, 3rd in the American League, a 111 WRC+, 5th in baseball, 3rd in the American League, and 189 ISO, which was 3rd in MLB, 2nd in the American League. They had 5 players on the roster hit 20 or more home runs. Standout players for sure were Nick Kurtz, Jacob Wilson, Shea Langoliers, and Tyler Soderstrom, in my opinion. You can't forget about the 30 home run season from Brent Rooker, too, as well, who was one of the 2 All-Stars that the A's sent to Atlanta this year to represent, and Brent Rooker also had the opportunity to participate in this year's Home Run Derby. So I think the offense showed a lot of promise, and I do think at times they looked like one of the best units in all of baseball, and I think that's why they were ranked so high. But you can see a lot of these categories, they're at worst 6th, I believe, in the American League. Everything else seems to be 2, 3, 4, like in that range. They're a top 5 offense in the American League, and at worst, the top 10 unit in all baseball. And that's something, because I do think this lineup still has a lot of growth that it can go through. While, like, you do have your veterans like Rooker, Shea Langoliers really seems to be coming into his own more and more each year. And you see the increase in productivity, and there is a little bit of an increase of that willingness to go to opposite field. The A's were in the top half of baseballs driven to with their opposite field percentage. So I do think as the season went on, there was a change in approach, because I do think you see the youth side of this lineup to an extent. So like I mentioned, they struck out 1,406 times and only drew 502 walks. While you see there's a ton of productivity, those numbers I just mentioned were in the bottom half of the league. And I do think that just comes with more experience, getting more MLB at-bats. Because in certain situations, you may go out of your zone. You may be a little swing happy at times, just trying to be productive if you're a younger guy, trying to prove you want to stick. A's had double-digit rookies debut this year, so you know there's a lot of guys, whether the most stoic rookie or not, you are going to have certain situations where you're going to try to do a little bit too much. And I do think that is part of the learning curve too as well. You start to develop that plate discipline as you get a little bit older and a little bit wiser. You get more experience. You just see more pitch types at the big league level. So it's definitely not a knock on the A's team because at the end of the day, you look at it, they were very productive and they had a tough 3-week stretch, losing 20 out of 21, but everything around that was winning baseball. And I do think when we'll get to the pitching side here in a minute, this team's success, the majority, I would say, of the 76 wins was on the foundation of how good this offense really was. Because while the A's bullpen was nails in the second half of the season, this pitching staff as a whole, I think, underperformed and didn't give the team early, and I do think didn't have the ability to be able to stop the bleeding during that May-June stretch, which really got this team out of it sooner rather than later. I do think it spoke early on. I don't think there was as much depth as they hoped. There were some injuries. But then you started seeing these younger guys start coming up through the system and have productive quality major league innings like Jacob Lopez and Luis Morales. So you had some promising sides, which I think really carried over into a positive second half. But again, I think a lot of the team's success this year, you can credit the offense. Let's get to the pitching side of things, and I'll let you know what I mean. So they were ranked, according to Fangraphs, 25th in all of baseball out of 30 staff, so in the bottom 5 for sure. They had a 4.32 ERA, which is 23rd in baseball. They struck out 1,323 batters, which was 20th in baseball. Pitched to a 1.36 whip, which was 25th. They had 43 quality starts, which is also 25th. A 4.16 expected ERA, so they were supposed to do a little bit better. 23rd in baseball. Had an 8.11 K per 9 rate, which is 24th in baseball. A 3.44 walk per 9 rate, which was the 4th highest in baseball. A 1.2 home run per 9 rate, which was 9th in baseball. And a 16.7 WAR, which was the 5th lowest of any pitching staff in all of baseball. So these numbers as a collective, and I do know there are some dire splits here. It seemed like this was a pitching staff that really took half a season to settle in and play to the home element of Sutter Health Park. You heard in the media, like Luis Severino, his whole routine needed to be altered, and he had such huge splits. He was one of the best road pitchers in all baseball as compared to one of the worst, as compared to being one of the worst home pitchers. Like his ERA was so vastly different. You even had Jeffrey Springs. It seemed like he had some difficulty early in the season getting through that first inning without giving up some sort of damage. I think whatever routine he changed up, his pitching plan, it seemed like that really settled down over the middle and back end of this season. But I do think it just was an adjustment, and I think eventually they got used to pitching in those certain elements where it was the second most hitter-friendly park in all baseball, just behind Coors Field this year. But as a unit, I don't think they were a driving force. I mean, you can make an argument that this bullpen in the second half, which they had the second lowest ERA of any bullpen in baseball just behind Cleveland, since the July 31st trade deadline, where they did move Mason Miller and J.P. Sears to the Padres for a slew of prospects. So it really was closer by committee, finding different ways to bridge the gap from that starter to closing out a victory or keeping the score at bay to give your offense an opportunity to slug their way back. But in terms of overall scope, I don't think this pitching staff performed particularly well. I do think the starting staff seemed to get a little bit of boost once they called up Jacob Lopez, who was absolute nails until he got injured during that final start in Seattle. And Luis Morales was absolutely impressive after his first start, where he seemed a little bit nervous, trying to overthrow a little bit. That Seattle start in Seattle that we had the pleasure of being able to view in person, from that point to the rest of the season, absolute electric stuff and should be middle to top of this rotation heading into next season. I think there's a lot of promise in his young right arm. But aside from that, and I think Jeffrey Springs really bounced back as your most consistent starter from pole to pole. And Luis Severino, I think, bounced back at the back end of this season once he returned from the injured list. Seemed to be finished on a strong note. Hopefully he can bounce back and be the ace we all know he can be. But in terms of consistency, I don't think they got enough of it. There were times where it seems like the offense would build a significant lead and the bullpen wasn't able to hold it. Again, this was more focused on the first half of the season where it seemed like a real grind to get the ball at the time to Miller. There were a lot of situations where they were just getting into slugfests. Some they'd lose, some they win, some they'd lose. But I do think this bullpen definitely ended the year on a positive note. And now they create a lot of depth from the younger guys they brought up through the farm system, as well as guys who are at the major league level to start. I do think just gain that confidence with more positive outings that they got. Just really, Hogan Harris comes to mind to me, someone that was brought up as a starter. He's had that kind of that swingman role where he's been a long reliever. But a lot of times in the second half of the season, he was called upon to be a high leverage reliever and even closer at times, and he absolutely delivered a sub-1 ERA over his last 20-plus innings of the season. He got a lot to like in terms of his momentum being a integral force in that bullpen for the 2026 season and beyond. I think got to affirm his role. Like, I know he's someone that probably is a competitor, would love an opportunity to win a starting rotation role, but you can see the stuff just ticks up, and he's got that mentality to get out of even a hairy situation like second and third, less than 2 outs, bases loaded, nobody out. He's got that mentality that he wants to put a zero up on the board, and he's going to come right after you with his best. I do think that comes out of him more as a reliever than a starter. So would love for him to finally be established there and make a positive impact on the 2026 team without a doubt. But yeah, so I do think this pitching staff, I think if you're going to look at this team as a whole, if there was one area that they got to start with in terms of revamping, adding some depth, adding a little bit more talent to have it be more of a strength as compared to a weakness, it would be right here, the pitching staff. I do think the potential's there. They just underperformed. And then you had some younger guys that were learning on the fly. But now I do think this younger core, mixed in with some veterans, I do think they can lead the way a little bit more, speaking to Severino and Springs in their full year as an Athletic. And you'll see it. We're going to talk about in our next show about a potential trade target that could be available on the block. But if you bring in another high-end starter, that might not be the worst thing in the world. Then you have Morales and Lopez back it up. So very interesting offseason for the A's. They definitely have a lot of flexibility in the payroll to do so. I do think the A's are in that balance where I do think they are ramping up for an opportunity to at least be in the postseason discussion this year. So why not enhance the pitching staff, make it more of a strength? I do think they have the opportunity to do so, and I do think there could be some interesting arms out there on the market. So time will tell there. And then for the third aspect of this team, the defense, they were also ranked 25th according to Fangraphs. They had a .984 fielding percentage, which was 23rd in baseball. They were actually tied with the New York Yankees. They had a negative 20.8 def, which is 25th in baseball, a negative 11 OAA, which is 18th in baseball, a negative 2.3 OSR, which was 15th, and a 6.6 arm, which was 6th in baseball. So defensively, this is an area they can vastly improve in. I do think this got better as the season rolled along. Really love the efforts that Tyler Soderstrom had in left field, so much so that he was nominated for a Gold Glove. Obviously, you got Denzel Clark in center field. We saw him in limited action, but when he was out there, he was a human highlight reel. So got to love what you're getting in defense there. I do think Lawrence Butler showed a lot in terms of his defensive development over this year. Definitely always had the range, but I think he was more consistent with it, and his routes to the baseball seemed a lot more crisp. Very excited to see him continue to take those steps forward. But when you think about that sounds like a pretty good defensive outfield if you ask me. I thought Butler did a great job in center field filling in for when Clark missed the rest of the year due to injury. So if Butler can do what he did in center field, I think he'll be an even better version of himself when he slides back over to right field. I'm expecting big things from Butler. And then the infield defense is going to be interesting to see who they roll out with. I think Jacob Wilson was pretty solid all in all. But they are going to have some guys, like there is going to be a competition for second base, third base. So it'll be really interesting to see. And then Nick Kurtz, he's nimble like a cat over there. So really excited for him to take that next step. Definitely a lot of exciting plays that he made. Has a pretty wide wingspan and pretty good range, so he can cover a lot of ground. And I think he's a good anchor for that defense. And Langoliers continues to take leaps forward. I think he's gotten much better at receiving in the catch and throw. His caught stealing rate did increase 6 percentage points behind Raleigh, but closing the gap there for sure. So very interesting to see. I hope this is an area of emphasis, their pitching and defense, because I think their offense is going to absolutely mash in 2026 once again. But to be that team, to separate yourselves, I think that philosophy needs to go more into your pitching and defense. Make sure we're repping out defensive philosophies and drills all throughout spring camp. You can take all the batting practice in the world, and these guys who bang the ball all over the ballpark. But at the end of the day, this team, as they continue to grow and mature, they need to be reminded and to be taught the fundamentals of the game. That's what you're seeing from a team like Toronto that's in the World Series right now. They do the little things right. They're really good at base running, really good at defensive metrics and taking care of the baseball, doing the little things right. I do think the A's do that more times than not, but you can see there were moments where their youth showed a little bit. So I do think if we're setting a foundation of winning through our pitching and defense, the offense is going to be that cherry on top. So really looking forward to seeing what the A's come out with into spring training and beyond. But we'll give our team grade. We thought the offense really outperformed even our expectations. Like we knew they were going to have a successful year, but didn't envision them being a top 6 to 5 offense in all of baseball. So definitely high marks there, but the pitching staff, I think, underperformed to our expectations a little bit. So we found them somewhere right in the middle, finishing the season 76 and 86, positive winning record since June 5th, which is always an encouraging sign to play that long, extended, or June 15th, a positive record. Them playing that brand of baseball, of winning baseball for several months, is a sign of good things to come. But so we found ourselves grading them out with a C+. We think, it definitely is a positive. You're moving in a positive direction in your rebuild and your growth of your youthful core when you're continuing to win more games than you did the year before. But, taking into account that May and June, if that slide doesn't happen, or if you even cut it in half, this team would have firmly been in wild card considerations this year. So I do think that goes to them. At the time, they were really figuring out, learning how to win, and there was really no one that stepped up in that situation to stop the bleeding until it was too late. But nevertheless, I do. There was a lot to like from this year. A lot of exciting moments, some walk-offs, beating some good teams. When they beat Scoobel, that might have been one of the best games of the year. But we give them a C+, and we do expect this grade to increase in 2026 because the expectation, I think, is going to be higher for them. Like now that you see they're now within a range, they're moving in 10 games under 500. You can see a team, like the Blue Jays, and not expecting the A's to be in the World Series hunt next year. I still think that is a ways away, but in terms of teams being able to flip the script pretty quickly, look at the Toronto Blue Jays. Last year, they won 77. In 2024, they won 77 games. This year, they won 94 games, and they're in the World Series. They're up 1-0 on the defending champs. So, baseball with the modern game, anything is possible, and you can flip the script rather quickly. So that's why, we keep harping on it throughout these off-season episodes that I firmly do believe that the A's should be in the postseason hunt next year. I don't know how far they'll go, but knowing that the brand of baseball allows more parity in the game, when you're moving in that positive direction and creating that positive momentum, there is an opportunity, especially with that third wildcard spot, gives more teams an opportunity to get into the postseason then. So very excited to talk about all of that at a later date for sure. But that wraps up our final season in review, the A's edition. So very excited to track along their transactions throughout this offseason to see what they do to retool and improve this team to make that postseason push in 2026. All right, we will get to our next segment after we do a quick ad read. So after the ad, we're going to do our next This Player in A's History. We're going to be talking about Jimmie Foxx, one of the greats in A's franchise history, but in all of baseball as well. We'll do a quick ad read for Visit Mesa, and then we'll get back on track for our final topic of discussion for today. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this ad read. Back after this. Welcome to Mesa, Arizona, a destination for every season. Experience a destination where adventure, culture, and culinary experiences are limitless. As the gateway to the stunning Sonoran Desert and Tonto National Forest, Mesa invites you to explore its scenic waterways, kayak through winding canyons, or paddleboard along the Salt River. For a one-of-a-kind desert adventure, ride the waves at Revel Surf at Cannon Beach, the country's first surf park of its kind. Downtown Mesa is a vibrant hub, home to the Mesa Art Center, public art, award-winning breweries, and local shops. Food lovers can explore the Fresh Foodie Trail and the diverse flavors of Mesa's Asian District. Sports fans can experience MLB spring training with the Chicago Cubs and athletics, or visit one of North America's largest youth sports complexes. As the world's first autism-certified city, Mesa is dedicated to accessibility and inclusivity for all visitors. Okay, we're back. Let's talk about our next This Player in A's History segment. We got a great one today. So like I mentioned at the top of the show, we selected a decade in A's history. So we have from all the way from the 1900s all the way through the 2020s. And when we randomly took it out of our hat in last show, we were chosen with the 1920s. So I did a little bit of digging and research, and I saw one of the greats for sure, and I wanted to talk about him with you, the lovely audience, today. So we're going to be talking about Hall of Famer Jimmie Foxx. So I'm just going to read off a couple of quotes about Jimmie Foxx just to really set the stage for how great of a hitter he truly was, and just to really give you that vision of, man, how hard was he hitting the baseball? But here we go. So I got two. This one, if I were catching blindfolded, I'd always know when it was Jimmie Foxx who connected. He hit the ball harder than anyone else. That was said by Bill Dickey, former catcher. He's also a Hall of Famer himself. And from former big league pitcher, left-handed pitcher Lefty Gomez, this is a quote: "He was scouted. He wasn't scouted. He was trapped," which led to him to get his nickname, the Beast. And I do think he was ahead of his time. I think he was about 6 foot. So he was one of the bigger guys in his time era for sure. Because you're seeing a lot of bigger players now in the modern game. But at that point, you would see, I'd say more guys probably in the 5'8" to 5'10", 11 range. Guys 6 foot, 6'1" were a little bit rarer for that decade. So I do think that's where he got the nickname the Beast, and was crushing the baseball too as well. He was a native of Sudlersville, Maryland. He ended up signing his first pro contract with the Eastern Farmers of the Eastern Shore League in 1924 at the young age of age 16. That's right, he was in high school, and he signed his first professional contract. In 76 games as a professional catcher, because that's actually what he got signed to be and what he eventually ended up making the big leagues as a catcher, he had 296 with 10 home runs and 11 doubles, adding a 469 slug. That was his first year. Just imagine a high school player, 16 years old, having that kind of a stat line against professional players. That's impressive stuff. He must have been someone that blossomed a little bit early, but just was one of those guys that was gifted and destined to be a professional baseball player, because that's impressive stuff. A 16-year-old doing that, even if it is the minor leagues and there was less depth of talent there, that's still impressive if you ask me. And then the following season in 1925, he ended up starting at the Double-A minor league level so it was a team that I think was owned by two entities, the Newark Bears and the Providence Grays. They combined to be one team for that year. After hitting .326 across 41 games to kick off the year, he made his MLB debut, getting the call up. At the time, they were the Philadelphia Athletics at the age of 17, where he only appeared in 10 games, but he made an instant, lasting impact. He got off to a hot start. He went 6 for 9, which was a .667 batting average, with a double, and only struck out once in those 9 plate appearances. So talk about making an impressive start and coming swinging right out of the gate. He got his first hit of his career on May 1st, 1925, in a 9-4 loss against the Washington Senators against Veen Gregg. He would end up sticking in the majors from there for the entirety of his career. In the 1926 and 1927 seasons, however, He didn't get much playing time. He only played in 87 games combined due to he was the backup catcher, Jimmie Foxx, to future Hall of Famer Mickey Cochran, who's one of the all-time greats himself. So I do think young guy he needed to wait his turn basically, but what a great opportunity for Foxx to learn from one of the greats. Even if he wasn't getting a ton of playing opportunities, that's someone that sometimes it's best to learn by watching, to learn how to be a professional and learn how to have a professional preparation for each game. I do think that was excellent for Fox's career over the long term and over the long haul of his eventual 20-year professional career. So, following the 1927 season, in order to get Jimmie Foxx into the lineup, because Cochran was still a staple on that Athletics team, they transitioned him to a new position. Jimmie Foxx was heading into the 1928 season, the starting first baseman, and that is the position that we've all known and grown to know the famous Jimmie Foxx for being a stalwart over there. A lot of people may not know that he actually came up as a catcher, but definitely ended up being a solid first baseman indeed. And from there, the Hall of Fame career would begin. In 118 games in his first full year of opportunity, Foxx would go on to bat .328 with 13 home runs, 79 runs batted in, and a .964 OPS. And he would go on to compile a Hall of Fame career that follows over the course of 20 seasons. He played in 2,317 games. He batted .325, 534 home runs, 1,922 runs batted in, a 1.038 OPS, and 2,646 hits. Just to add to his extensive and rather impressive resume as it is, he was a 3-time MVP. He won those awards in 1932, 1933, and the 1938 season. Also, to go along with that was a 9-time All-Star selection. Along with his MVP season in 1933, he was the Triple Crown winner. And if you're not aware of what that is, the Triple Crown winner is the hitter that leads the league in your respective league. So he was in the American League Triple Crown winner. Leads the league in batting average, home runs, and runs batted in. He did that for the 1933 season. Over his career, from 1925 to 1935, Jimmie Foxx played for the Athletics. In 1936 to 1942, ended up playing for the Red Sox and finished up with the Cubs and Phillies, retiring after the 1945 season. So just to give some impressive rankings of where he is in all-time MLB stats, his 534 homers are the 19th most of any hitter to ever play the game. So there's only 18 more hitters to ever play the game and lace them up that hit more home runs than Jimmie Foxx. And even more impressive, his 1,922 RBIs, they are the 8th most, top 10 of runs, just one of the best run producers to ever step into the box. Absolute amazing stuff and longevity to his career. Such a long period of time of absolute offensive dominance. And his .325 career batting average ties him 33rd of all time with Joe DiMaggio, who also had a .325 career batting average. Not an impressive, a rather impressive rankings to be in those three major offensive categories, to be top 35 across the three. You can imagine why he was an instant, or rather quick Hall of Famer. Some fun facts about Jimmie Foxx. Like I mentioned, he was nicknamed the Beast just because of how hard he would hit the ball. Apparently, it would make a significantly different sound as compared to most of his opponents and his peers. And then also they would call him Double X because of his last name. Fox spells it with 2 X's. Some other fun facts. He managed the Fort Wayne Daisies in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League in 1952. And if you're familiar with the movie A League of Their Own, Tom Hanks' character in that movie is loosely based off Jimmie Foxx. So now if you watch that again, you may have a different perspective watching that. Foxx was a multi-talented athlete in high school. He also competed in track, sprinting, and high jumping, so definitely was quite the athletic specimen indeed. He was a right-handed hitter and thrower during his career. On the personal side of things, after his retirement and after it seemed like he was done coaching for a little bit, he ended up making some bad investments, trying to extend his money, but it ended up making Foxx broke by 1958, excuse me. But thankfully, he did end up landing employment with the Red Sox as their AAA hitting coach. They were the Minneapolis Millers of the American League, so they were able to provide him with steady income from there. Eventually, Foxx would retire to suburban Cleveland, where he was employed by the Lakewood Recreation Department. From all accounts, it seems like Jimmie Foxx was a really good-natured man with a famous smile. So it was definitely a pleasure being able to research him and learn more about one of our game's greatest and certainly one of the best A's to ever don the green and gold. It was an absolute pleasure, and I had always heard the name and definitely was pretty familiar with Foxx, but then getting to dig into his statistics a little bit more and just seeing the longevity of his career and how young he got a professional start and being able to remain so even-keeled, I do think he's a good representative of what a professional should be. So rest in peace to Mr. Foxx as you leave behind a glowing legacy indeed. I was glad we were able to do this next segment of this player in A's history, talking about Jimmie Foxx, one of the A's all-time greatest, and definitely one of the greats in Red Sox history too as well. But yeah, wow, I'm very impressed. I didn't realize he had that many home runs as well, and I knew he was one of the top run producers, but I didn't realize 1,922. That's impressive stuff. That speaks to being consistent at your craft and having a long enough career to be able to remain in the middle of the order and make a positive impact too as well. So that's Jimmie Foxx, a Hall of Famer. I believe he was inducted in 1951. Just one of the greats in A's history. An absolute pleasure. Hope you all enjoyed that. It was definitely a treat for us to be able to dive in to the pride of Sudlersville, Maryland. Mr. Foxx, you're one of the game's greatest, and we look forward to continue to share your story. I'm sure there'll be other opportunities where you'll come up, maybe in some of our A's trivia. If there's a fun story I find about, we'll definitely bring it up here for you, the lovely audience. And with that brings us to the end of another edition of A's Day. This was a fun one today. We did our final season review segment where we did the team edition. So we assessed the offense, pitching staff, and defense as a whole, and we gave our grade of a C+ for their performance over the 2025 season. That saw them conclude with a 76-86 record. Not good enough to make the postseason, but they won 7 more games than they did last year. So definitely moving towards that positive trajectory of being in the postseason hunt in 2026 and beyond. And then for the back half of our show, we did the next segment of this player in A's history. We talked about one of the game's greatest, Jimmie Foxx. It was an absolute pleasure researching him and sharing his story with you, the lovely audience. Hope you all enjoyed. Please, wherever you can subscribe, comment. We'd love to have an open dialogue. If there's anyone in particular that you would love us to talk about and do a deep dive in, we can even skip taking a year out of the hat. We can go with an audience suggestion too as well for a certain decade of A's history, or if there's a player you have in mind that you'd love us to do a deep dive about, let us know. We're definitely open to all ideas indeed. We'll be back on Monday behind the mic as regularly scheduled. We're going to have a couple of fun segments here. So like I mentioned earlier in the show, that one way that the A's can bolster this team significantly is by bringing in a legitimate bona fide starter. And hearing that a player in Hunter Green from the Cincinnati Reds, who do have an abundance of pitching available, may be open to training Green this offseason. So we're going to have a mock trade to see what that would look like, swapping with the A's and the Reds, and see if a deal can get done. They were trade partners earlier this season. We'll get into all that on Monday and give us our mock trade and then give our thoughts if that's a reality or not. And then we will do just a little fun segment just to be in the World Series spirit while the A's aren't in it this year. We are going to construct their roster based on as if this 2025 team was in the World Series. We'll do a little bit of matchups as if they were going to be the AL representative taking on the Dodgers, going off some mock scenarios just to have some fun with it. We're getting a little bit creative here in the offseason to keep us all plugged into everything athletics. That's all I've got for you. Get back to your weekends. Hope you're all enjoying some relaxing time away from work. Certainly, we are here without a doubt and looking forward to continuing to share interesting content regarding A's baseball. Once again, I'm your host, Joe Grado. Thank you, each and every one of you, for continuing to tune in with us. And we'll be back once again to continue the dialogue on Monday's show. Have a good day, everyone. Holy Toledo. Let's go A's.
Sounds good.